kuram bisan wa jangama kuram bisan ya matrenelo Yandem marong yandem jai kai wai yandem marong suma yandem marong kai wai kuram bisan wa jangama mernala big wajal sumanje ke na zed yo ya maton yen kilime na fonye bang fan tv yen kilime na fonye bang fan tv yen kilime na fonye bang.
Mr. So,
Yes, sir.
this initiative is laudable. It is good to come up with something of this ideal because it's not only a learning point, but it opens a lot of things where people become aware. People saw things in practical sense. And of course, they will be involved in the processes. This is why it is vital for us to have somebody or people, personnel from institutions that are concerned with disaster, that is a National Disaster Management Institution or agency, and that should be nobody else but Madam Mbasi Sane, Program Officer. Madam Sane, we are eager to hear what you have for us, because some of us, let's say, are complete tabla rasa. What I mean by tabla rasa is we know nothing about. I don't mean myself. I mean some know nothing about disaster and the way your institutions work. You are here to take us through, and I am sure your presentation is going to be a learning point to most people. Madam, you are welcome to the stage.
It's a pleasure to be with you, and then a pleasure to have this kind of program in the Gambia, and first of its kind. It's really a pleasure for me because I'm always advocating youth involvement in DRR, and even of recent October 13th year globally, the UNDRR with the rest of the world celebrate International Day for DRR. And even I wrote an article regarding building the resilience of the youth. It is published on the 1st of November with the Point newspaper. You can check it online. So this is not a surprise, but it's a pleasure. When Molamin approached me, I was very delighted. I said, Molamin, it seems that you were reading my mind. Okay, not to waste your time. First of all, I would also like to acknowledge the presence of my executive director, who found us almost at the tail end of the opening statement of by the Honorable Deputy Speaker. And I would like to acknowledge all of you, your presence, and then our delegates from Nigeria and Zimbabwe. Welcome to the Gambia, the smiling coast of West Africa. My presentation today will look at NDMA at glance, as already Dr. mentioned, because some of or many of Gambians didn't know what NDMA is all about. So sometimes even I do have that challenge. They will say, people will not see you until when disaster happens. And they didn't know that we do work behind the scenes. Okay, the presentation outline first, we will look at NDMA at glance, the act, the policy, the strategies that we have in place, and then the contingency plan that guides our implementation in the country. First of all, NDMA, before becoming an agency, was under the purview of the Vice President in 1996. And then from there, they established a committee called Disaster Relief, Rehabilitation, and Resettlement to see the issues of disasters in the country. But then by then, Gambia Red Cross Society was taking care of all those disaster and humanitarian works in the country because there was no agency established. And then the objective was just only to be doing relief distributions to the communities affected. And then from there, 2006 to late 2009, it went to the UNDP as a project. So being in the UNDP for a project, then the government of the Gambia felt the necessity that we need to have an institution that will coordinate disasters in the country. Because already Red Cross is mandated to do something else, so they cannot mainstream the issues of overall national coordination of disasters with their work. And then under the UNDP project, that's where they helped the government of the Gambia to develop the act of the agency in 2008, the policy and the strategy. And then in 2009, November, the agency was established and start operationalization under the Office of the Vice President. So we are mandated to coordinate disasters or all emergencies in the country. So now we can get to the organograms of the institution or the agency. When after the establishment of the act and the policy and the strategy in 2008, our line ministry is the Office of the Vice President, who is our overall boss, and then he or she chairs the overall issues of disasters in the country, and they are called Disaster Management Governance Council, chaired by the Vice President. But then in this council, it's not Vice President alone in this. You have other ministries, all ministries in the country are part of this council to help the Vice Presidents to do. Already the previous speakers have mentioned in the morning, disaster is cross-cutting issue. And it's like no man, it's not one man show. So everybody have a role to play. So all these ministers are part of the governing council, help the vice president to do the work and then to do some strategic decision making when it comes to disaster issues. And then the executive director is the secretary to this governing council. And after the governing and the executive director, we also have technicians at technical level. That's the technical advisory groups, or as recommended by the UNDRR to have a national DRR platform. So these technical groups, we didn't invent any wheel, we just maintain them to become the national platform members for the DRR. And then we have a decentralized structures in all the regions. We have 7 regions, and then we have all our officers in these regions, and they are working with the mayors and the governors at regional level. So at regional level, the governors and the mayors are the vice presidents there, helping the coordinators to be able to implement their work. But then at regional level also, the regional coordinator also is working with technicians there called the regional disaster management committees from different institutions at regional level combined together to work with our regional coordinators at regional level. And then at district level also, we have the chiefs, and the chiefs also is working. If you can see the arrows, like it's back and forth, because communication goes up and then it comes down so that the work can be easy and then implement as it should be. So district level, the chief is the head there, and then working with his teams. And then we have district disaster management committees also at district level, also helping the chiefs to be able to do their work. And then at village level also, we have the alcalos. But then the alcalos at village level are closely working with the VDCs, because we know in the local government at village level, the VDCs are kind of head in the village. So they have to be working closely with the alcalo on the issue of disasters. And then at village level also, they develop disaster management committees. So all these structures is a mandatory as indicated in the Act. So that's why we have all these structures in the country, from the regional to the district to the village level. And then the functions of the Disaster Management Governance Council, just to mention few, to ensure the implementation of the Act, advise the government on the overall matters relating to disasters and coordination in the country, and then also to advise the Vice President on the needs when disaster strikes, the kind of support that needs to be given to the affected communities, and then also state of an emergency, because they do meet. In the Act, it is mentioned that they should be meet 3 times in a year. So during those meetings, that's where they will also be informed by the executive director on the issues related to disasters. Then that will help them to be able to advise the vice president on what to do on the matters of disasters. And then also when that happens, security is very important. When disasters or any emergency strike, the first thing that we ask is the security is to help us to be able to control the public for us and the environment. So when we need that kind of situations also, we didn't have the power and the mandate. So the IGP or the CDS is always in the picture, because they are also part of the governing council. So they give us those security advices in terms of disasters in the country to do redeployment in the areas, and then also help regional disaster management coordinators to have resources to implement because they also have their work. We have a national work plan, but then we also have regional and district work plans that needs to be implemented by the communities themselves. Because when we say disaster, disaster is now community-led DRR. So let them take ownership as the youths want to take ownership and take the lead in DRR. Next, Mohammed. And then this is the information flow that we have in the agency. When you looked at, you see disaster, that red star is disaster. Anything red is not like pleasant. So when we have when disaster happens in the country, the first thing that the agency need to is to get information from the regional coordinators. Wherever disaster happens, the regional coordinators are there working with their committees. So now they will get the information, they will be informed on the kind of disaster that happens within their region. So when they get the information, they will filter it to the director of operation because he is also overseeing all operations in the agency. Then from there, the operations director now will get to the executive director to inform him what is happening from the regions, and then the executive director then also relate the message to the vice president as the boss to discuss on what is happening in the country or at regional level. So this is how we communicate. And then from there now again, the executive director, when he communicates it to the vice president, he will get back to the operations of director to give him or her the feedback he got from the vice president. Then that will also help the deputy executive director, the director of operations to get back to the regional coordinators, giving them the feedback from the central level so that we have that kind of communication and then we all communicate and speak the same language. And then from there, the regional coordinators, as we said now, in collaboration with the director of operations, will quickly come and see how best they are going to develop a response plan to respond to a particular disaster in that community or in that region or in the country at large. And then from there, the executive director will not stop. A communication will now go to after the governing council. The governing council also will now communicate back called the crisis management. Initially in the second slide where I talked about the national platform and the technical advisory groups. They will be communicated also. And then from there, the UNCT also, because it's not government alone. We have the UN system, you have the NGOs, you have the CBOs, all part of and the private sector, taking part in the governing council decision making matters. So this is how we communicate, the line of communication from regions to the operations director, executive director, vice president. Then from the executive director, operations to regions, and then you get to the national platform, that's the crisis management technical working group, and then you get to the UN bodies and other stakeholders to be informed on what is happening in the country. And then the vision, the policy here, the 2008 policy, the vision is to strengthen the coping capacity of people against all hazards. I think since in the morning, the first presenters and the speakers have been talking about this capacity building, because if you don't have capacity, you cannot respond or you cannot take care of the risk or hazard surrounding you. So the mission is to continuously build up the country's resilience from shocks, being natural or man-made. And then the objectives is creating an integrated national capacity from climate change impacts. As I always say, climate change and disaster, they are married, husband and a wife. Climate change is the husband, disaster is the wife. Because the impact of climate change is causing disasters. So disaster will give birth to the problems that we are facing. Strengthening local risk reduction capacities of communities also is an objective in the policy. Ensuring the DRR is systematically integrated in policies and programs. All these have been mentioned by previous speakers. It seems like they have already have a balance of the presentation. Strengthening an integrated national disaster preparedness and response capacity at all levels. So these are just few and the key objectives in the policy that we have at NDMA. And then the scope of the policy is an overall guiding framework for addressing all kinds of disasters or risk in the country, and then also promoting priority measures to address all this that we have. Next slide. And then the focus areas of the strategy intervention already mentioned, making the DRR as a development priority, but we have to mainstream them. If not, all this development that we are doing here, it's zero, because disaster is something that within the twinkle of an eye, it can bring development, but within a twinkle of an eye, it can disrupt development. Improving early warning systems. How do we communicate, inform people earlier before anything happens so that they can take care of themselves to save lives and then properties that we have in place. So early warning is very important. It saves life. Already the speaker, deputy speaker made mention of it and citing some Asian countries on the early warning system that they have in place. And then here also we have, because we are collaborating with the Department of Water Resources, who normally gives us weather forecast, telling us the rainfall patterns that we have, and then the weather and the sea frequencies that we normally have in the country. Addressing priority development concerns to the use underlying risk factors. You should know within your environment what are the risks and how are you going to handle these risks. If you don't know, it will be difficult to address the issue of disasters in the country. Effective disaster response to disaster preparedness. You cannot respond whilst you did not prepare yourself in disaster. And even if it is not in disaster, even our lives is a disaster, because you have to be planning yourself A, B, C, D to be able to respond to things that you may encounter along the line. Okay, the challenges that we have in the policy: low level of risk awareness and knowledge on DRS, especially in the country, is a challenge. People do think that disaster is only when it happens you respond. No, you take measures before it happens. So people don't have that knowledge. So, but we are trying at agency level with partners to make sure that that awareness raising is very high. People should know that disaster is everyone's business. Do not sufficiently, DRR not sufficiently integrated into development policies and planning. Already it was mentioned, and then I even saw it should be mainstream in school curriculums and the like. And at agency level, we are also advocating for that, because we learned that at the university they have, but they are just teaching the basic of disasters, but not into details. So we want it to be having different models, become a standalone subject at the University of the Gambia. Maybe they can like kind of climate change and disaster risk reduction, something should be in the university and schools also. Primary, starting from primary schools or nursery, because if you look at the Asian countries, the teaching of disasters starts from nursery schools. They say grow with them. So it starts from nursery level. They start to teach you. You can see, if you go online, you can see Asia, where it had, if at all earthquake is about to happen, the drilling exercise the nursery school students will do. So they prepare them from that early stage. So if you have that preparation from that early stage and you grow up it, it's like when disaster happens, it's going to be something normal to you, because already you have the knowledge and the skills and the know-how. So it's very important. And then thank God also from the recent national development plan of the country, we able to at least have a space to mainstream the issue of disasters in the development plan. So, but we are also urging all sectors to also mainstream the issue of disasters in their sectoral plans, so that the developments that we are talking about can be achieved and maintained. Inadequate DRR capacities, already mentioned, human resource, finance, materials, the space even, it's very limited or sometimes it's not available. So how do we going to make sure that we have all these things in place? Implementance of the policy recommendations, like proper planning. If we look at our urban setting here, year in, year out, flooding. Why is it that we are having that flooding? The development is not well planned. We are congested. Structures are anyhow, that we are not using our building codes. So we just construct anyhow we want. And then when it rains, water will not find a way to go. So, and then water must get out, and water will find its way. Whether we give way or not, water will find its way. So either it will come back to the communities, or it will find a natural way out to the streams or to the river. So our settlements are very important. We have to be very careful on how we settle. We don't settle haphazardly. Sometimes people settle on waterways, and that causes flooding. And in the country, that is the biggest challenge that we have. People settles on waterway, and even if you do your hazard mapping or risk mapping, and then those places are identified as hotspots, and then even people to evacuate or to leave those places, that's a challenge. So many things involved in that. So the young ones coming up, it's a caution and an information that I want to share. When we are doing our development planning, let's factor a proper urban planning to at least not to say we are completely going to get rid of issues of disasters in the country, but that we can minimize the issues of disasters, the destruction that it caused in the communities. And then also protecting conservation, forest issues, environment, all these things are challenges. We know forest, environment, waste dumping, solid waste dumping, and even liquid waste dumping all over. Now, some people will construct their toilets and then the pipe will be out in the street, affecting the environment. Our health is at risk. So the strategic focus of the NDMA strategy is finance and resource mobilization, partnership building. That is one. With this require that we are trying to build partnership with them, because this is our first meeting with them. So from here, I think we will going to strengthen this partnership to be working closely with them, because they are here to help us to do our work. And if they take over, we will just sleep. Because already we will empower and give them skills so they take over. And then also as the future leaders of tomorrow, they continue with the development of the countries or the communities that we have. Communication is very important. If we are not communicating in disaster, we are not saving lives. You communicate, you save lives. You try to maintain or strengthen your developments that you have. And then also continue to educate people to know what to do next. Monitoring and evaluations. You cannot do without monitoring and see what is happening. That will inform your next decision. Development plans. Let's have plans in place. So many plans are there for disaster management. You can have plan for preparedness. You can have plan for mitigation. You can have plan for evacuation. Because you cannot jumble up everything in one. But then you have to have all these plans to be guiding you on the kind of disasters that you have at hand to be respond to. And then this is one of the picture. I know that now everybody is familiar with this picture, because every session I go, this is the picture that they will present on, even on climate issues and the like. This was 2022 flooding that happens in Banjul. So you can even see the urban planning that I'm talking about here. Where do you think the water will find its way? So the water gets into the communities, in the houses, bedrooms. If you go for assessment, that's the time you will know what disaster is all about. Everything in the house will become inundated. You will see people topping up their chairs and bed on top because the house is flooded. They cannot sleep there. The mattresses, everything is soaked in the water. So this is a picture that I bring to see some of the impacts of disasters. And then we also have a plan, that's the multi-hazard contingency plan, that helps us to do some hazard mapping to know what are some of the hazards that we have in the country, and they are also disturbing the country in terms of disasters. So the objective of the contingency plan is to identify those things so that we're able to reduce and maximize some of the impacts of disasters that happens, and then also to ensure that we have an effective humanitarian response plans in place, because you cannot have a plan and everybody is like here and there, but a coordinated manner is very important in disasters, because disasters also, some people take it as an opportunity to enrich themselves when it comes to response. So you need to be very strong to have that coordination in place. And so, as already mentioned, coordination exists to avoid those duplications, delays, and other constraints you might have during the time of response. Mama? As I said, this is the hazard ranking from the contingency plan. We have floods, When we did our hazard ranking, we realized that flood becomes the number one hazard that we have in the country. And the windstorm. Every year it comes, and I think all of you can attest to that. Every year we say flooding, flooding. They will say NDMA, flooding, and flooding. Everybody, media will come to our office. Windstorm, windstorm. This happens every year. Fire and domestic fires also happens, especially domestic fires. And even it was on Monday evening, I was telling my director of operation, wind starts, we have to do something. The regional coordinators to start that sensitization, especially at rural areas where they will be cooking outside, and when the wind comes with a speed, the fire can be spread and then it causes destructions in the communities. So those are also some of the problems. Epidemic also, this one also we do have, like cholera outbreak. We do also have measles in the country from Minister of Health reports. These are some of the things they are challenged with. But also, if we looked at this also will link to the global pandemic that we have, the coronavirus, the famous coronavirus. So that's why we also need to prepare our health system in terms of health emergency issues. Drought also is a problem in the country. It's not every year, but we do experience drought also. And when that happens also, it becomes a problem in the country. It becomes food crisis that we will challenge with, malnutrition and so many things related to it. Pest infestation also do happen. It's not frequent, but then we do have around 2012, 13, I don't know, there was a pest infestation in LRR where farmers were not able to harvest any rice because we were having migrating birds called quella quella, and they said that bird, the moment it gets to your rice field, within 10 or 30 seconds, the rice field is completely gone. They have eaten everything. So that's why we bring it. It's not common, but it do common. So all these things you bring them to prepare yourself so that you not be found under catch 2022. And then the reporting format for the contingency plan that we have is whenever we get a report, we have a flash update and hours after an emergency, and then we started to develop a CITREP. Maybe not all of you, but then I don't know, but we normally share that CITREP. Even this month, we share a CITREP that is a situational report. We normally share with partners, telling them how the issues of disasters and the number of people affected in the countries are and what kind of support they need. We give out that, and then situational analysis also within 72 hours using the secondary and the primary data that will determine to help inform decision what kind of response will be given. And then after that, then a detailed assessment they will do. These are just rapid one that will inform decision makers on what to do. But then that will not stop. It's a simultaneous thing. Regional coordinators and their teams will be doing assessment, detailed assessment to know the number of people affected in each household and what are some of their immediate needs that needs to be given to them. So that detailed assessment will be done, but it's a multi-sectoral assessment, not done by NDMA alone, but with other stakeholders also. And then thank you. That's it.
You have to go out there together with your personnel, your regional coordinators, and inform the people that it's dry season. If not, disaster will strike. Of course, they will strike because some people are not very prepared for it, even though they've got the information. So education is very fundamental in whatever you do at disaster level. Of course, people always blame disaster, MDA. You only respond when there is disaster, not knowing that you do a lot of background education, a lot of background activities to make sure that some of these things are mitigated, because your core mandate is to mitigate. Of course, you cannot stop it from existing or from happening, but your core mandate is to mitigate. And mitigating there, you always bring early warning signs. These are some of the things that people don't pay. But keep doing your job. Inshallah, we will get there. And when we get there, we will have at least some element of reduction. If not total reduction, we'll have some good element of reduction. And that's what we call for celebration. All right, Mr. It is fundamental that we recognize the presence of the director. Mr. Director, you should have been given the floor earlier. Nevertheless, it's never too late. So here you are. We will have to give you the floor to tell us something about the agency. Can you come over, Mr. Director, please? Let's give him a round of applause.
I really want to recognize the presence of our partners, African Union, our able lecturer at the university, National Disaster Management Agency staff, and the organizers and the participants, also the youths. First and foremost, we all know that the Gambia government recognized the youths of this country, and they place high premium when it comes to youth affairs in this country, because we actually acknowledge that youths in this country are the greatest asset of the Gambia. So we can actually attest to that. Personally, I am honored and privileged to associate myself with this conference, this youth conference related to disaster. Are so well intended, and all meaningful training couldn't have come at a better time. The shift in recent years from disaster response to disaster prevention and disaster risk reduction (DRR) is largely motivated by the high toll of disasters, both in terms of human suffering and the loss of economic assets, mostly affecting the young people. Due to their disproportionate nature, natural disasters affect young people, women, men, girls, and boys differently. In fact, in most cases, due to socio-economic conditions as well as cultural beliefs and traditional practice, women and girls are more affected by disaster, including loss of life, loss of livelihood and productive assets, an increase in gender-based violence as well. A most disturbing impact brought on by disaster is the adverse condition of migration, which make people choose to migrate temporarily or permanently to other regions or countries to seek better living conditions. These issues pose a great challenge for disaster management, as information on affected population is often limited to aggregated numbers and rarely goes beyond the household level. Cognizance of this, the government adopted recently several policies, including the National Disaster Management Policy, Population, Education, Youth and Health, to name but few. The revised National Disaster Management Policy and Population Policy 2024 to 2034 to better cater for an integrated approach that brings together the effort of the government, UN agencies, NGOs, civil society, local authorities, youth, women, and local community to pursue the most viable, effective, and sustainable disaster to cope the incidences of disaster in the learning environment. The gathering today is a clear manifestation of this, as young people in DRR, with the support of African Union, is championing a discussion that would no doubt help to bridge the gap of awareness and ultimately harness the potential of youth to contribute proactively in disaster risk reduction through experimental learning. The capacity to anticipate and analyze possible disaster threats is a prerequisite for prudent decision-making and effective action. Yet, even practical early warning will not ensure successful preventive action unless there is a fundamental change of attitude towards disaster perception. On these premises, there is a need to work through stakeholders and partners to be able to undertake rapid assessment, especially during disaster. Certainly, the youth constituents has the numbers and the potential to do so. The need to enhance the capacity of youth, especially in expanding their disaster risk reduction to grassroots, is of great significance since it will minimize coordination concerns and enhance great community participation. Therefore, I urge you to optimize this opportunity to deduct sensible and practical recommendations as how we can build upon the moment using the youth infrastructure and that of NDMA so as to achieve greater impact. I have no doubt that the caliber of young people I see in this room will deliver just that. I wish you a successful deliberation and let me use this opportunity to thank the government of the Gambia, the African Union, and the partners, and also to declare this youth conference open. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much, Executive Director. This is what is expected of you as the head of such an institution. Since morning, we've been hearing speeches. It is important also for us to have something else that is going to teach us a bit. We call it brain teaser. And this is why we have to invite some people or someone who now to present some poems for us. Poetess Senabu Ture, are you on the ground? Yes, we want to hear your melodious voice. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Good morning, everyone. God loves us, don't you think? And that is why He's striking us with disasters every day. Yeah. So I'll be reciting two pieces, if time permits. And the first piece has no title. The other piece is Died for Living. So we will go with the first piece. I don't want to make you guys cry. You guys will not cry. Okay. My words will cut like a sharp blade. Sometimes I couldn't listen to me blabbing. Sometimes I have thoughts provoke me, but then I revoke me, enter too deep when my heart instructs me. Actions poisoned, poised into the root me. Forgive me. My temper will snap like a finger, taking shots at every speaker, breaking very loose to your last nerves. That's opposition discipline. I'm sorry. But I'm the third of four. In my home, I am the baddest of them all. At age 4, I knew what is to destroy. So I smashed everything with my voice. My dolls and toys, the noise I enjoyed, the people I annoyed, my sorrows and joys is not a prattle, but a little brittle beetle handling battles. With an ancient mind, I remembered everything I see. So I feed hearts with lies for mom to believe me. I whispered sweetly in her ears for favors in my endeavor. The whole family hated me, called me for a news. But as I grew, I became mom's junior. She is a guru. And every morning, her yells I will hear. My school bell blows in my ears. I will tear the road with top J's. In my school J's, I fought my peers whenever they dare. First position, I never share every year. To my mom and dad, I am there. To them, I am the best of their mares. My siblings declared that unfair, gave me nightmares, yet in truth, there was more to this glare. And because of imprudence, my mind was dirty, malleable, sticky like mud. When mommy knew, she said, Kundobin Raisa mam, boo gisee lu ñuul ka ndaw ba dee te jekku jekkali dafa xewi kon jéggaleel jéllaleel te jàngale. That docked out my brain and drew reality on its wall. She taught me how to speak, and since then, my voice began to sound loud. My brain began to cook new ideas. My words started healing hearts, and like a goldsmith, I weave all in one puddle: poetry, songs, stories, all in one puddle. But I bet now you know why I don't giggle. My story cannot be your honey, so stop those rambles and get to learn the parables, because this is not a prattle, but a little brittle, biddle handling battles. Thank you. All right, so we move with Died for Living. This is for the victims of that were all the victims of human rights violations and illegal migrations. So it reads: months ago, excited in uniform, cruising our gunky roads at Bakau to American Corner. My crew, a batch of students in experience, looking at ourselves hanging on this mirror effect, the door opened. A woman from the other side spilled out our host, showed us to a library. And like you, we seated ourselves on the bleachers. Two women walked in serious like semi-rifles. Little did we know they went through hell and back fighting to survive, unfolding to us how they were smuggled. I am a victim. They opened. These words hit my heart like an attack when she said she met the devil at work in man flesh, attentive like the therapist she ever wished for. This agent called her sister. Better you will have not in this country. He claimed he was a pathfinder to abroad, and for trust, she left reality behind. Hopes on her mind, passed on from transit to transfer like petty cash, packed somewhere in nowhere like old stash, with family afar. Her youth was preyed upon, and only escape by God kept her alive. Same goes for men. Put in coffins behind bars to be fondled, swindled so they can sling or get shot into prison, get robbed of their organs, bleed from forced sex until death lays their soul to rest. A saga of pain none dares to unfold. And elsewhere? Yes, elsewhere. Family buries a kin on sin. A part dies with the assumed dead. Media brings evidences of lost hope, but some call it a ruse, no? That's time for truce. A wake-up call for none to refuse, none to shun, because our son was pulled and back into planes and cast to another man's land, away from home to another land, like slaves to be enslaved by another man, who says he is kind to a poorer man. Far he stands with a dollar sign, far from the comfort's hand, far from real, because hastiness knows no counterfeit, forced to do things beyond their means like non-humans. Right? Buried under smugglers' feet who keep walking above the laws of the land like the landlords of evil, and evil has its place, and its place is the police. So report all cases to United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, Human Rights Established Commissions, for the plea of amnesty to stand firm. I have made my voice to be heard, so it's your turn for the world to listen. With your voice and mine, we will wake everyone passing on this transnational crime. It's time to heal ourselves. Thank you.